The hardest part of a divine promise isn't the grand vision. It isn't the moment the stars are laid out before you, or the night the fire passes through the blood of the pieces. The real test is surviving the ordinary, crushing silence that follows. When days turn into months, and months turn into a decade, faith begins to rot into desperation. You look at the mirror, you see the wrinkles deepening, you count the gray hairs, and you realize that while God has all of eternity, your biological clock is screaming. 10 years. That is how long Abraham and Sarai had walked the dust of Canaan since the first promise was made. 10 years of setting up camp, building altars, and waiting for a baby's cry that never came. They aren't villains. They are just exhausted, aging humans watching their legacy evaporate in the desert heat. And as the silence grows deafening, Sarai decides they have waited long enough. If heaven won't move, humanity will have to force its own hand. Enter the Egyptian solution. Sarai approaches her husband with a calculated legal strategy. She says, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my slave, perhaps I can build a family through her." To a modern ear, this sounds like an act of shocking, visceral betrayal. But to the ancient Near Eastern mind, this was standard corporate risk management. According to historical legal codes found on tablets across the ancient world, from Nuzi to Babylon, if a primary wife was barren, it was considered her legal duty to provide her husband with a surrogate concubine to ensure the survival of the family estate. Any child born from that union would legally belong to the primary wife. Sarai looks at Hagar, the Egyptian servant they had brought back from their previous moral failure in Pharaoh's court, and she sees a loophole. She sees a tool to manufacture the blessing God was taking too long to deliver. But notice how the text frames this moment. The author of Genesis wants you to look past the cultural norms and see the spiritual tragedy. The language here is a deliberate, haunting echo of the fall of man in Genesis chapter 3. The text tells us that Sarai took Hagar, gave her to her husband, and Abraham listened to the voice of his wife. It is the Eden blueprint all over again. Once again, humanity looks at a boundary, decides that God cannot be trusted to provide, and reaches out to grab control of destiny with their own hands. The plan works instantly. Hagar conceives. But the moment the ancient loophole succeeds, the psychological foundation of the household violently implodes. In a single moment, the entire power dynamic flips. Hagar, who woke up that morning as a completely powerless, invisible slave, now carries the ultimate prize, the physical seed of Abraham, the heir to the entire estate. The text records a sharp, psychological shift. When Hagar realized she was pregnant, she began to look on her mistress with contempt. The servant now feels superior to the queen. Sarai, consumed by a toxic mixture of grief, jealousy, and humiliation, completely cracks. She turns on her husband, shouting, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." And what does the great patriarch do? Abraham, the mighty warrior who just conquered kings, abdicates his responsibility entirely. He retreats into a cowardly, passive silence. "Your slave is in your hands," Abraham tells her. "Do with her whatever you think best." With those words, Abraham signs a warrant for abuse. Sarai begins to mistreat, humiliate, and break Hagar, crushing her newfound status until the domestic toxicity becomes a living hell. Pregnant, battered, and utterly terrified, Hagar does the unthinkable. She runs. She flees the camp of the chosen family, sprinting straight out into the scorching, lethal wasteland of the Shur Desert, the brutal wilderness that guards the border of Egypt. Humanly speaking, Hagar is completely invisible. She is a non-person in the ancient world. She possesses the ultimate trifecta of vulnerability. She is a woman, she is a foreigner, and she is a runaway slave. She has no wealth, no protector, and no legal rights. Abraham's tent has chewed her up and spit her out into the dust to die. She is sitting by a muddy spring in the middle of nowhere, waiting for the desert heat or the wild beasts to finish her story. But the story does not end in the sand. The angel of the Lord finds her by the spring. And notice this carefully, God does not go back to Abraham's tent to scold the patriarch. He goes out into the dirt, to the margins of the world, to find the outcast. He speaks directly to her, and the very first word out of his mouth is a revolution. Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? He calls her by her personal name. To Abraham and Sarai, she was just an asset, a body, a legal transaction. But to the sovereign of the universe, she has an identity. He validates her pain, but he also commands her to return, promising her that her unborn son will be named Ishmael, which means God hears, because the Lord has listened to her misery. He promises that her line, too, will become a vast multitude. In response to this breathtaking restoration of her dignity, this runaway slave does something that no patriarch, no prophet, and no king had ever dared to do before. She looks up into the heavens and she gives the Almighty a personal name. She calls him El Roy, the God who sees me. Let the weight of that sink in. The first person in sacred history to give God a name was not the wealthy patriarch standing in silk robes at a stone altar. It was a broken, pregnant, Egyptian slave girl running for her life in the mud. She realized that you can be cast out of the chosen family's tent and still be completely surrounded by the gaze of the Creator. Following this step-by-step chronological narrative of Genesis, the messy reality of Abraham's family is only getting started, but the character of God has just been fundamentally redefined. If Hagar's survival moved you, hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, and tell us your thoughts on the God who searches the wilderness in the comments below. We'll see you in the next chapter.